Welcome to the Eindhoven Innovation Café. Thank you for being here on Ascension Day. Also welcome to everybody who's watching online. Today we have two speakers. They were both nominees for the Kazerne Design Awards. We have Eva Jagerman and Ruben Warnshuis. Ruben Warnshuis won the prize. Afterwards, we'll have the opportunity to see the workplace of Ruben Warnshuis and also Eva's exhibition. We can also have drinks and we'll provide the snacks. But I'll leave the floor over to Eva first.
Do we need to stand here or there? It's okay. Anywhere. So, hi. Thank you for being here. It's nice. I'm going to tell you a bit more about the project, the graduation project, naar eigen hand, which could be translated by at your own hands, by which I mean to say working with your hands and creating in the way that you want and you desire. In very short, this project is about crafts and collaboration, and I'm going to tell you a bit more about why and how this project came into. So I often work with textiles as I use as a medium to research or to translate my ideas. And in this project I focused on the knitting machine. I didn't know yet about how this machine operates, and I wanted to learn and master this technique. So I was curious to this modern machine and how it works. And I wanted to learn and master this technique. Knitting machines are very efficient and fast. They produce knitwear super fast, which is nice, but I wanted to be more involved in this making process, and I wanted to learn to understand how this machine operates. So together we developed an enlarged wooden version by enlarging all the working elements and researching how does this machine work and creating this knitwear. And by doing this, enlarging all the used elements, you learn the technique, like we learned the technique and we became part of this making process, and that's exactly what I wanted. And now that we have this machine, I can learn other people as well this technique, or let other people experience this working together. The main important elements of the machine are the handles. Normally it's very tiny like this, but now we enlarged it to a size like this. The weights, that is keeping the knitwear straight and pulling it downward to keep equal amount of stitches. And the 15 bobbins, we have 15 bobbins placed on top, and you can wind all different kinds of yarn in any color or any material that you would like. The material that we used is leftover yarn that we collected from friends and family. And we knot these leftovers together and wind them on the bobbins. And so they are combined through one eye, and then it's becoming a combined thread that makes it also the thicker size. How this machine works is that you have to collaborate. One or two persons are pushing the handles back and forth, and the other is guiding the thread. And if you do it at the same time, then you can create a knitwear. I'm going to show you a little video about how this works, and then after I will show more about the end result. So the handles and guiding the thread over the end of the handles. I hope it works. now we need to restart, I think. Yeah, there it is. So the outcome of working with this machine is enlarged knitwear. As you can see, it creates bigger stitches. And you can, by using these leftovers, I like it that you can use all different kind of materials or colors or with glitters or fluff, whatever, and make different color combinations. You can make gradients by changing the color. If one bobbin is empty, take another. And you can also make different patterns. For example, straight, how do you say, knit and purl. Yeah, stitch. Or just dropping stitches or leaving stitches and then taking them back on, so you can create different structure patterns. And different sizes, you can make it as long as you want. This one is cutted, but it's a 5-meter one, so you can make it as long as you want, and if you want it bigger, you can sew it together, so combine it. And you can use it at home, for example, more functional as a home blanket for on the couch or to cover your bed, or more as a decorative function to put it on the wall. So that's the outcome. And for me, the value in this project is that you have to work together and you become part of this making process, and so learning this technique and using the leftovers to create something new. Thanks.
Are there any questions? I have a question about...
Hang on, I need to.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your very beautiful presentation. I remember I was at the award, so it's the second time. And at that time, we didn't really have a chance to ask questions, but now we do. I have a question about your machines. I saw it in the main hall, so to say. Did you put them together, all the machines?
Can I talk through this? Yeah, it's the machine is in English, I don't know the word, démontable. Someone knows.
You can take it apart?
Yeah, it's all separate parts. It's like you can screw it all out, and then you just have some wood laying there, and then you can put it all together. It goes quite fast. So for workshops or something.
But you did it, you put it together.
Yeah. With the two of us, we always put it together. It makes it easier and faster. So very efficient. More questions?
Well, it's not so much a question, but I found it interesting that you build a machine, and what used to be something that not as much drove people apart, but you had knitting. Then it became machinized, industrialized, so it became very dehumanized. And you reconstructed back into something that brings people together. So I think that's really a beautiful concept.
Oh, thank you.
So, super.
Thanks.
You also do workshops, right, for the work the machine?
I tried it once, but also Corona made it quite difficult to because you need to keep this distance, and it's not very possible.
Do you know what the experience are from what they like? The times that you were able to do the workshop, do you know what they...
Yeah, I did it at a day care center, which was very nice because there was a very different public, people that didn't speak my language, or very little child or elderly people. and also some younger guys. It was really nice to see all the different reactions, because they all had some connection to it. Like the guys really liked the technique behind it that becomes visible with the size. They were just looking at it. And the elderly people, they know, oh, I had this knitting machine when I was younger and I know how it works, and they feel this connection to it. And the little children, they just like to try and see something move, and that's fun, and something comes out. Yeah. So very different reactions, so it's really nice.
Nice.
Simple question. So as you said, there was knitting and then it was machinized. So in between, did this machine exist, or is it just like new one?
I think it's also a cultural thing. You have different, every culture has a different way of making something. So I think it's also more of a development within this machine. Like you have knitting with 2 needles, which is the same technique, but then you use a different tool. And the machine, you also have a hand-driven machine, and then you just do this, and that there is a rotation wheel in it, and that's pushing all the handles. So it's basically the same, but then by doing this, and I didn't understand and want to discover that, but there's also an automated machine that's automatically doing this, and then you can just program which pattern you want, and it's just making it for you. So there's different kinds. There's also a round knitting machine that's making your socks, for example. So same technique, but a different way of making it. It's all tools, but all different ones. And this one I made is more inspired on the weaving looms. You also have very big weaving looms that you also have to work together. Someone's on top and screaming or singing the patterns, and the other person below is also winding the thread. So it's an inspiration.
So is it an invention?
It's not an invention because the technique is existing. I just copied it and enlarged it, and I left out the automatic driven. So actually you become the drive. Yeah. But it's the same technique, but then I blew it up.
Super nice.
I was also wondering how you wanted to continue this project in the future. Do you want to? Are there any specific ideas for that?
Yeah, I would love to continue in some way, and I think there's different ways, because there's the machine, of course, so I can do workshops with it, but there's also the outcome, and I also want to discover like how can you use it, and what kind of ways can I use different materials that gives it another function, or could I shape it differently, make a different size knitwear that gives it something else. So there's multiple ways I could continue. I would love to do workshops again and try and see and learn people and connect with them in that way. But I would also like to do something with the outcome and see if I can bring it somewhere.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your questions and also you for answering them. Next up is Ruben Warnshuis, continuing the idea of developing your own garments. So, the floor is yours. First.
Hey. First off, I think it's actually quite funny that for the innovation meeting, both me and Eva are both drawn to the craft and in a way trying to simplify production. I think that also signals there might be a need. I think you said it quite well through automizing and computing production. We almost dehumanize it. And I think that's also the whole reason that I started Industrial Devolution. Industrial Devolution is very much a project where I realized that through production or outsourcing production, we almost also outsourced responsibility and the affection towards our objects. So industrial devolution is very much a research in the opposite of that, to close the distance between users and the way our objects are made. So basically, in essence, it's a small-scale factory. The small factory allows all the tools to be there and to have a completely woven 3D or 3D woven process to make shoes or footwear. It's a very raw workshop where there's a lot of space for intuitive making, and there's as I said for the title, there's an urgency to become more self-sufficient. And the low-tech production allows to close the distance between producer and user. And I think that's also quite interesting that because we produce now everything through computers, these computers or machines also have their limitations. And through removing these and simplifying the process, there's also a lot more freedom for the process of making. As you can see, the tables are made in a specific way that are as cheap as possible. It's quite raw, and yeah. I'll take you very quickly through the 4 steps, but I would also like to invite you to the space and give you a small demonstration. I think it's a lot nicer to touch everything and see how everything moves rather than see it from pictures, but let's go through it very quickly. The first station is the Loom Station. I make moulds, or it's actually a sort of looms from plywood or other materials in the shape of the foot. Because this is quite simple, it allows me to make every mold or loom to the specific foot of the person that wears it. So that already gives a lot of freedom in shape and size. The second station is what I would call the tube station. On a series of tubes, I weave the profile of the shoe. You can see like a little profile that is the comb that decides the shape of the shoe as well. The third station is the pricking station. There's a sort of almost harp-like object that measures the length of the rope and that goes through the tubes in the previous station. And that makes it that everything is connected. So nothing in the shoe is originally glued, everything is woven together, and that is what gives it its shape. And the fourth station is the weaving station. So you see the foot shape in the mold. There's a series of needles that I would like to invite makers to bend and also experiment for themselves to see what works. And I think that's also very much the essence of that whole making process, to not be a designer that says, you have to do it this way, but I sort of designed a methodology rather than a series of steps. So, yes. There's a few rules regarding the workshop. They are accessibility, adaptability, and economic inclusivity. That means that those three factors are what's really important for me. Accessibility means that it's possible to come in the workshop and start weaving, and I can learn you in a day how to make your own shoes. But it also means, for examples with the needles, that depending on your needs or the shape of your shoe, everything changes with it. Adaptability means that you can change everything in the workshop. That's what I also meant with it's more of a methodology rather than a predetermined process. And economic inclusivity means that it's the investment that you put in the production is rather time and craft and energy rather than money to automize everything. So those three values were really important for me in the workshop. This is the first generation of the workshop. So the needs are those three, and depending on like secondary needs, the workshop changes with it. So this workshop was made to be as cheap as possible. I recently built a second workshop, which was this one, which also had a lot of different tools. The second workshop, the needs were a bit different. It's still made from leftover pieces of wood. But I discovered that the first workshop was really difficult to move, and I show it at a few places. So there's been slight adaptations to make the workshop also. Well, this is what I mean with adaptability. So the workshop can adapt to the needs of the person who uses it. Yeah. So what comes from the workshop? It's footwear. It's quite experimental footwear sometimes. Sometimes it's also a bit more commercial, and that's also the same adaptability of the footwear itself. I did realize there's not a single way to make the perfect shoe. So if you look at it from like a super local perspective, every shoe has different needs. So sometimes you need warmer shoes, watertight, and for every need, like the shoe has its own identity with it. And at the same time, it's quite nice that the shoes are very expressive of themselves. The material I use in the workshop is just mainly rope. Both virgin material as recycled material, I make them myself. And every time you use a different rope, the technique of the rope is different, the material is different, the thickness is different, and that every time that changes the shoe with it as well. So there's two very distinct or very different ropes used in these two shoes, and they also get very different qualities. So one is a lot smoother, the other one is a lot softer and warmer on the foot. And by playing with the materials, you can then engineer the shoe with it. So there's quite a lot of different identities also possible with the shoes. And then again, so these are completely, or most of them are completely woven, but it's also possible to add an extra layer of wood as external sole to prevent wear and tear. It would even be possible to use foam soles as well, like I'm wearing right now. And in this way, I would also, very much like to see these objects and these shoes as also a form of expression. There's a direct link between the materials and the identity of the shoe. So by having this conversation also with the user, what materials do you want? Do you think it's more important that it's organic or durable? Normally these are choices that are made by the producer, and now they become very visible, so they also become an expression of these choices. So they get the identity of that. And so I would also like to show it to you in a bit, but for the presentation that was it. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ruben, so much for your yet another beautiful presentation. I remember you on stage, and congratulations on getting the award.
Thank you.
The question is, what are you gonna do? What's next, actually? I mean, what are the ideas just to put it into the industry and experiment more? What are the next steps? What are plans to come?
Yeah, so I see right now 3 very distinct routes that you take. I think the workshop needs to be, like the information on how to build a workshop, that information needs to be spread. So it would very much like to make like an instruction manual or something like that, in a way that the workshop also allows others to build it as well. I think I also really enjoyed this specific identity of the shoes. So I think one collection of shoes would be like a bespoke shoe collection, where there's only one pair of them, but they tell like a very specific story of a yarn or a material, and they become like this, they embody this super local narrative. And as the third step, I would like to also make a somewhat more commercially available pair of shoes. And I think that's also, I'm going to be working with the textile or the shoe museum. So that's the first time also I'm going to really work with experts. For what I did right now, I've done everything through experimentation and iteration and problem solving. And this is the first time I'm actually going to be around the table with experts. So that's also super interesting.
Thank you so much. I think I would like to go back to your workshop there, and then I have more questions, like practical questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It's I saw it in the Rotterdam objects, and I was already impressed by it. But what I don't understand is, I really appreciate the part where you are both the designer of the technique, but also trying to implement this workshop. And what I don't understand is how you position yourself. Like, do you relate this to yourself? So you are a shoe designer and this is your signature. But I don't understand the workshop part. How do you see that evolving, and how is that related to you as a designer? Yeah, complex.
Okay, I think the thing is that I don't necessarily see myself as a shoemaker.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather see myself, it's sometimes a bit weird to say, but like an inventor, or I really like to figure out how things work and then play with that. And I think then to sort of figure out also how to share that with others. So it has the potential to change something rather than to say like, okay, this is mine, and I'm going to keep this. So I would rather share it and then be the first original inventor of it than to keep it for myself. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does, because it's related to other fields, and they call it open source. And
Yes.
in design, it's very limited when it comes to open source. So
Yes.
it's super nice to see this initiative.
And at the same time, I'm still very interested in the whole open source medium. But at the same time, most of the open source projects are very digital. And I think that's what makes it also a bit different, because this is as low tech as I can possibly get it. So then, for me right now, it's also a little bit of the search on how to share it and how to make it open source, or a way, at least for people to be as accessible as possible.
Yeah, very nice.
A classical question: what are you gonna do with your €5,000, with your award? If you can share, you can disclose. Thank you.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do with it is I'm thinking of upgrading from studio. Right now I'm working in the Untitled building, and I've been working last week on the second generation of the workshop, or the second workshop, and it became such a complete mess that it's not really doable. So right now I do have a little bit of the financial freedom to look at a slight upgrade, also maybe to a space with some machines. And at the same time it allows me for some freedom to experiment, and also I really want to do some collaborations with people who make their own rope or have like a development in that in the fields of rope making or sole making or something like that.
This is all, very anti-industrialization,
Yes.
but what happens if the demand gets bigger for the shoe?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I think initially I also started the whole project with the idea that it could also very well be a workshop where you can come in and make your own shoes. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I necessarily have to be the person that produces everything. Yeah. So in that sense, it should could balance out.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
And otherwise, there's going to be a wait list.
And how are they in comfort and sustainability?
Yeah, that's quite nice, because they change very much between each shoe if they're comfortable or not. Because the things I have right now, they're super comfortable, but they're also made from plastic. So that's then a downgrade. And right now I'm also very much figuring those things out, because most natural fibers, they are a bit tougher to the skin, like Hito or I forgot the name. But in that sense, there's still a lot for me also to discover. The nice thing is that I looked at this research paper that has an alternative way of footwear or ergonomics, and that said it's a little bit regarding also the barefoot movement. So the shoe, rather than support every part of the shoe as most sneakers do and shape the foot or shape the shoe to your foot, right now there's it only closes at the ankle. And for the rest, it's just a layer of textile that goes over the shoe. So that's a very beneficial part for comfort.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, I think in a second we will go over to your workshop and see how the process goes. Thank you to all our watchers online for being here. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see the workshop place itself, but you're always welcome to come over to the Kazerne. Thank you, Ruben and Eva, for your presentations and giving such an enlightening and refreshing perspective on the making process. And for everyone else, Eindhoven Innovation Café is here every week. Next week we have Tom Kortbeek here about the capability of plants to make music. So check out the website for more information about that. There's also the possibility to have drinks and dinner after this. We'll provide some snacks during the drinks. But for now, have a nice evening and thank you.